Dallas, where oil money built the skyline and Cowboys jerseys are basically currency. But here's a fact that you don't know. This city has the 8 richest families that control over $300 billion in combined wealth. And their stories involve a poker legend who won $11.7 million in one day, a Supreme Court battle with Anna Nicole Smith, and a college dropout banker worth $12.6 billion. Let's break down Dallas's richest dynasties, and trust me, the #1 family will absolutely blow your mind. 8. The Rowling Dynasty, $8.8 billion. Hospitality empire. Let's start with Robert Rowling and his family, who turned oil money into a hospitality empire that's reshaped how Dallas does luxury. Rowling's net worth sits at $8.8 billion, built by selling his father's Tana oil and gas for $476 million back in 1989, then strategically pivoting that capital into TRT Holdings, a diversified empire anchored by Omni hotels and resorts. Now here's the wealth mechanic that made this work. Rowling didn't just reinvest oil money into more oil drilling like most Texas fortunes would. He recognized that hospitality generates recurring revenue through hotel stays, conferences, and resort bookings that compound over decades. Omni currently pulls $3.5 billion in annual revenue and employs 26,000 people, making it a serious operational machine printing cash year after year. Rowling's been a primary partner with Jerry Jones, yeah, that Jerry Jones, in developing the Star in Frisco, a $1.5 billion complex housing the Cowboys headquarters and an Omni resort. This partnership turned Frisco from suburban sprawl into a legitimate destination, proving Rowling understands real estate synergies beyond just building hotels. But here's where it gets interesting. Rowling also acquired Gold's Gym for $180 million, diversifying into fitness facilities that create another recurring revenue stream through memberships. His vision transformed Frisco into what people call Disney World for golf, headlined by the $500 million Omni PGA Frisco, the new home of the PGA of America that hosts major championships. The family's influence extends into politics through substantial conservative spending and major donations to Southern Methodist University, reinforcing Dallas's Golden Corridor, where business and academic power intersect. There was controversy in 2009 when Robert resigned as a regent of the University of Texas system over a dispute involving investment bonuses, but it barely dented his reputation. Rowling represents the smart pivot wealth model: inherit or build wealth in one sector, then strategically redeploy capital into industries with better long-term economics and recurring revenue models that survive economic cycles. Oil money pivoted into $8.8 billion worth of hotels and resorts. Smart diversification. But what about a college dropout who became a math genius, built a $12.6 billion banking empire, and once won $11.7 million in a single poker session? 7. The Beal Dynasty, $12.6 billion. Math genius banker. Andy Beal is arguably the most fascinating self-made billionaire in Dallas, and his story sounds completely fictional until you verify every detail. A college dropout who started by reselling broken televisions, Beal built a $12.6 billion fortune through almost inhuman discipline in banking and mathematics. Beal's wealth flows through Beal Bank and Beal Bank USA, which operate on a wholesale banking model that's brilliant in its simplicity. Avoid consumer loans and checking accounts entirely, instead buying distressed assets during national crises when traditional banks are paralyzed by fear. He famously cleaned up during the 2008 financial crisis by purchasing commercial real estate debt and aircraft loans when everyone else was running for the exits. Here's the counter-cyclical wealth mechanic. When markets crash and banks desperately need to offload bad loans to meet capital requirements, Beal steps in with cash-buying assets at 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. When markets recover, which they always eventually do, those same assets return to near full value, generating massive returns. It's patient capital deployed with mathematical precision. But for YouTube audiences, Beal's real legend comes from poker. He's the protagonist of the book The Professor, The Banker, and The Suicide King, which chronicles his early 2000s challenge to elite poker pros known as the Corporation. including Phil Ivey and Doyle Brunson. Beal forced them into heads-up matches with stakes as high as $100,000/$200,000 blinds, intentionally pushing limits so high the pros would play with actual fear instead of mathematical confidence. In 2004, Beal won a record $11.7 million in a single day against these professionals, proving that extreme stakes fundamentally change poker psychology even among the world's best players. That's not just gambling. That's applied game theory executed with billionaire-level bankroll backing. Beyond poker, Beal's a legitimate number theorist who proposed the Beal conjecture in 1993, a mathematical puzzle generalizing Fermat's last theorem. He continues offering a $1 million prize for its solution, which remains unsolved over 30 years later. His personal life is equally cinematic. His second wife, Simona, reportedly claimed $20 billion in their divorce settlement at a time when his actual assets were only around $6 billion. The audacity of claiming triple your spouse's net worth is genuinely impressive. Beal represents the ultimate contrarian wealth path. Avoid what everyone else does, deploy capital when others panic, use mathematical thinking to find edges others miss, and maintain discipline that borders on robotic. A college dropout built $12.6 billion through crisis buying and won $11.7 million playing poker in one day. Absolute legend. But what happens when you move a $200 billion investment firm from Washington to Texas for tax advantages? 6. The Fischer dynasty, $13.2 billion investment powerhouse. Ken Fischer and his family represent the new Dallas that's transforming the city from oil capital to financial management hub. In 2023, Fischer relocated his firm's headquarters from Washington State to Plano, Texas, a massive win for the region's professional sector and a calculated move to avoid Washington's capital gains taxes. Fischer's net worth hit $13.2 billion in 2026, up from $11.2 billion the previous year, derived almost entirely from Fischer Investments managing over $200 billion in client assets. Here's the wealth mechanic that makes investment management so lucrative. Firms typically charge 1 to 2% annual fees on assets under management, which on $200 billion generates $2 to $4 billion in annual revenue before any performance bonuses. As founder and majority owner, Fischer captures a significant portion of those management fees, creating a wealth engine that compounds as long as markets trend upward and clients don't withdraw funds. The business model is beautiful in its simplicity. Collect recurring fees on assets that generally appreciate over time, creating double compounding. Fees grow as assets grow. The Plano relocation signals something bigger. Dallas is no longer just an oil town. It's becoming a money management hub, attracting institutional capital from across the country. By moving to Texas, Fischer avoided state income tax on billions in future earnings while anchoring what locals call the Platinum Corridor of corporate giants in places like Westlake and Southlake. Fischer's influence is characterized by aggressive, direct-to-consumer marketing, spending hundreds of millions annually on advertising that makes his face constantly visible in national media. This institutionalization of wealth creates thousands of high-paying finance jobs in North Texas, further inflating local real estate markets as professionals flood into affluent suburbs. The Fischer move represents a broader trend of wealthy individuals and companies fleeing high-tax states for Texas's business-friendly environment, bringing jobs and capital that reshape entire metropolitan areas. A $200 billion investment firm relocated to Plano for tax advantages. That's financial power at its best. Next up, we have a family that owns the Dallas Cowboys, settled paternity lawsuits, and turned a football team into a $13 billion empire. 5. The Jones Dynasty, $20.3 billion. Cowboys empire. Jerry Jones and his family occupy a completely unique space in Dallas culture. As owners of the Dallas Cowboys, valued at an absolutely staggering $13 billion, they've transformed a sports franchise into the world's most lucrative entertainment brand. Jerry Jones's net worth stands at $20.3 billion in 2026, a significant jump from $16.6 billion in 2025. While the Cowboys are his primary engine, His wealth is diversified into Comstock resources for natural gas exposure and vast real estate developments surrounding the Star in Frisco, a mixed-use complex that's become a destination unto itself. The Jones narrative is rooted in a 1989 high-risk bet that advisors called financial suicide. Jerry literally emptied his bank account and borrowed $50 million at steep interest rates to buy the Cowboys, a team losing $9 million annually at the time. Most people thought he was insane. Instead, he revolutionized NFL economics through aggressive independent marketing deals with Nike that bypassed traditional league revenue sharing, proving that franchise ownership could generate wealth far beyond just ticket sales. But here's where the Jones story gets spicy and why they're endlessly fascinating to tabloid media and YouTube audiences. Jerry's been involved in multiple paternity scandals that he settles with enormous confidential payments to avoid court-ordered DNA tests. In 2024, Jones abruptly settled a federal breach of contract lawsuit with Alexandra Davis, a 27-year-old legislative assistant who claimed to be his biological daughter. The case centered on a 1998 hush money agreement where Jones allegedly paid millions for the mother's silence regarding paternity. Rather than submit to DNA testing in court, Jones settled for undisclosed terms, a pattern he's repeated multiple times. This creates a bizarre dynamic where Jones maintains confidential but high-spending relationships with alleged children, fueling constant speculation about how many people are quietly receiving Jones' family money in exchange for silence. It's the kind of drama that makes the Cowboys interesting beyond just football. The family's wealth compounds through multiple channels, including the Cowboys' franchise appreciation that went from a $140 million purchase to a $13 billion valuation, stadium naming rights and luxury suite sales, merchandising revenue from being America's team, and real estate appreciation around team facilities. Jones represents the high-risk entertainment wealth model. Bet everything on a cultural asset, market it aggressively, monetize through every possible channel, and watch franchise values appreciate faster than almost any other asset class. $20 billion built on the Cowboys, settled paternity suits, and franchise value appreciation. Peak Dallas drama. But what about a family that tried to corner the global silver market and nearly broke the world economy? 4. The Hunt Dynasty. $24.8 billion, oil and sports empire. The Hunt family is perhaps the most synonymous with Dallas identity itself. Since H.L. Hunt's pivotal $30,000 acquisition of oil field leases in the 1930s, the family has expanded into a global powerhouse spanning energy, real estate, and professional sports with a collective net worth of $24.8 billion. This wealth is distributed across several branches. Ray Lee Hunt controls Hunt. Consolidated worth $6.6 billion focused on oil and real estate, while siblings Clark, Daniel, and Sharon Hunt own the Kansas City Chiefs and FC Dallas, worth approximately $8 billion combined. The Chiefs alone are now valued at $4.7 billion after their recent Super Bowl dominance. But here's the story that makes the Hunts legendary in financial history. In 1979 to 1980, brothers Nelson Bunker and William Herbert Hunt attempted to corner the global silver market by amassing over 100 million ounces, driving the price from $2 per ounce to nearly $50. This wasn't small-time speculation. This was trying to control an entire commodity market globally. The strategy collapsed spectacularly on Silver Thursday, March 27, 1980, when silver prices crashed and the Hunt brothers faced margin calls they couldn't meet. The financial devastation required a $1.1 billion emergency loan and completely shattered that particular branch of the Hunt empire. It remains a textbook case in speculative failure taught in business schools worldwide. Despite this catastrophic failure, other family members, particularly Ray Lee Hunt, stabilized the dynasty by steering Hunt Oil into international deepwater operations and massive Dallas real estate developments. The family's physical imprint is everywhere in the city. The Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, iconic Reunion Tower, Omni Dallas hotel partnerships, and sprawling office complexes. Clark Hunt serves as a pivotal NFL figure, having essentially named the Super Bowl trophy and overseeing the Chiefs' ascent into one of football's most valuable and successful franchises. His leadership transformed the Chiefs from consistent underperformers into a dynasty winning multiple championships. The Hunt family represents multi-generational wealth resilience. Survive catastrophic failures in one branch, stabilize through diversification in others, and maintain influence across industries through strategic positioning rather than putting all resources into single bets. 25 billion across multiple branches, a failed silver market corner, and Super Bowl dominance. Generational resilience. But what about a woman who just inherited $30 billion from an oil sale and chairs a foundation with $2 billion in assets? 3. The Stephens-Greth dynasty, $30 billion. Oil exit. Lyndall Stephens. Greth represents the new generation of Dallas oil royalty, and her story involves one of the largest energy exits in recent Texas history. Following her father Autry Stephens' death in 2024, Lyndall finalized a massive $26 billion sale of Endeavor Energy Resources to Diamondback Energy, catapulting her net worth to approximately $30 billion. Here's what makes this exit strategically brilliant. Endeavor Energy was producing 327,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day across 500,000 acres of Permian Basin rights when the sale closed. Rather than continuing to operate independently and face volatile oil prices, the family converted decades of drilling into liquid wealth through stock and cash, then immediately pivoted toward institutional philanthropy. Lyndall isn't just some heiress coasting on inherited wealth. She's a Baylor-trained lawyer who served on Endeavor's board since 2013 and took over as chairwoman during the company's most critical growth phase. Under her leadership, the company transitioned from a family-run private operator into a cornerstone asset of a publicly traded energy giant. The Stephens family maintained popularity in Texas because Autry Stephens operated on handshake deals and had a memorable cameo on the reality show Black Gold, which chronicled the search for oil in West Texas. That combination of old-school integrity and modern media presence created a brand that transcended typical oil baron stereotypes. Post-sale, the dynasty pivoted hard into philanthropy. The Stephens-Greth Family Foundation, established in late 2024, reports assets exceeding $2 billion, making it one of the largest new charitable foundations in Texas. Their influence in Dallas is cemented through massive contributions to United Way's Ruth Sharp Altshuler Tocqueville Society and Highland Park School's Lead for Tomorrow campaign. Lyndall represents the professionalization of oil wealth, legal training applied to family business governance, strategic exit timing to maximize valuation, and immediate conversion of liquid wealth into institutional philanthropy that creates lasting legacy beyond just drilling. $30 billion from a strategic oil exit and a $2 billion foundation. New generation wealth. But what about a family with 16% of Koch Industries who fought Anna Nicole Smith all the way to the Supreme Court? 2. The Marshall Dynasty, $30.9 billion Koch stake. Elaine Marshall and her family represent what insiders call shadow wealth, the kind of money that underpins American industrial power without seeking public attention. Holding a 16% stake in Koch Inc., which is the privately held conglomerate formerly known as Koch Industries, Marshall's net worth reached $30.9 billion in 2026. The Marshall fortune is managed through complex trusts for Elaine and her two sons, Preston Marshall and E. Pierce Marshall Jr. This 16% beneficial interest makes them primary partners alongside Charles Koch and Julia Koch, who split the remaining 84% voting stake in the $125 billion industrial conglomerate. But here's where the Marshall story becomes absolutely legendary tabloid material. Elaine's stake was inherited from her late husband E. Pierce Marshall, but the shares originated with her father-in-law, J. Howard Marshall II. The elderly oil tycoon, who famously married Playboy playmate Anna Nicole Smith in the final year of his life when he was 89 and she was 26. This marriage triggered a decade-long legal war that reached the U.S. Supreme Court twice in the landmark cases Stern versus Marshall and Marshall versus Marshall. Anna Nicole Smith claimed J. Howard had made an oral promise to leave her half his estate, roughly $450 million at the time. Elaine Marshall fought these claims ferociously, defending the family's Koch holdings against what she argued were baseless accusations. The legal battle was absolutely vicious, playing out in bankruptcy courts, federal courts, and ultimately the Supreme Court, with arguments centered on whether oral promises could override written estate documents and trust structures. The Marshall family ultimately prevailed, but not before Anna Nicole's story became a cultural phenomenon involving reality TV shows, prescription drug addiction, and her tragic death in 2007. Today, the Marshall family operates with extreme privacy out of Preston Hollow, one of Dallas's most elite neighborhoods. Preston Marshall has influenced national intellectual discourse as a former director of the libertarian Cato Institute, while E. Pierce Marshall Jr. manages Elevage Capital Management, demonstrating the family's shift from industrial operations into sophisticated asset management. The Marshall dynasty represents inherited industrial wealth defended through legal warfare, then professionally managed across generations while maintaining absolute privacy about operations and family dynamics. And while Marshall's $31 billion empire is impeccable, it still falls shy of what our number one family have at the top. They don't just have one billionaire. They have 3 people in the top 10 wealthiest Texans with a combined fortune exceeding $170 billion. Let's take a look. 1. The Walton-Kroenke Nexus, $170.8 billion, retail and sports dominance. And here we are at the absolute top. The Walton-Kroenke Nexus is not only the richest family connected to Dallas, but they also represent a convergence of retail dominance and global sports empire that's genuinely unprecedented in scale. Alice Walton's net worth hit $134 billion in March 2026, making her the world's richest woman for the 3rd consecutive year and the first American woman to enter the Billionaire Club. That's a $33 billion increase from her 2025 valuation of $101 billion, driven by continued Walmart performance and broader market appreciation. Stanley Kroenke, who maintains a residence in Electra, Texas, following his 2016 purchase of the legendary Wagoner Ranch, has seen his fortune rise to $22.2 billion. His portfolio is a masterclass in sports hegemony. He owns the Super Bowl champions Los Angeles Rams from the NFL, the NBA champions Denver Nuggets, the NHL's Stanley Cup champions Colorado Avalanche, and also the English Premier League's Arsenal FC and the MLS Colorado Rapids. Anne Walton-Kroenke, Stanley's wife and Alice's cousin-in-law, holds $14.6 billion primarily through inherited Walmart stakes. Combined, these 3 individuals control approximately $170.8 billion in net worth, essentially creating a Walton corridor of wealth stretching from Bentonville through Dallas to the sprawling ranches of West Texas. Stanley Kroenke's acquisition of the Wagoner Ranch, a property spanning hundreds of thousands of acres west of Wichita Falls, marked the end of a century-long family ownership of one of Texas's most iconic cattle operations. This move into Old West territory by New Retail Money illustrates the family's strategy of land banking and legacy preservation through acquiring irreplaceable historical assets. While Alice Walton maintains a lower corporate management profile, her influence operates through soft power philanthropy. Her Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Arkansas has shifted the center of the American art market, making the DFW area a major corridor for elite collectors and cultural consultants seeking her favor and influence. The family's dominance is so pervasive they occupy 3 of the top 10 spots for wealthiest Texans, creating a concentration of wealth and influence that's genuinely difficult to comprehend. When a single extended family controls nearly $171 billion, they're not just participating in markets. They're essentially shaping entire industries and regional economies through capital deployment decisions. The Walton-Kroenke Nexus represents the ultimate convergence wealth model. Retail empire generating cash flow measured in hundreds of billions annually. Sports franchises appreciating faster than almost any asset class. Strategic land acquisition, preserving generational legacy, and institutional philanthropy, creating cultural influence that transcends money. So there you have it. 8 Dallas dynasties controlling over $300 billion in combined wealth, built through everything from hotel empires to poker winnings, oil exits to Supreme Court battles with Playboy playmates, and sports franchises that became cultural institutions. Which one of these families impressed you the most? Drop a comment and let me know. And for more such interesting peeks into global luxury, take a look at global status. Catch you in the next one.